Okay, good evening. My name is Lynn Mulston. I'm president of Reston Citizens Association and will be serving as your moderator tonight. Before we begin, tonight we remember Congressman Gerry Connolly, a dedicated public servant whose unwavering commitment to his community and the country left an indelible mark. For over 4 decades, Gerry championed smart governance, bipartisanship, and compassion in politics. His legacy lives on in every life he touched and every case he fought for. He will be deeply missed. Now, I want to recognize our special guests that are in attendance tonight. Former Virginia State Delegate Ken Plum, Supervisor Walter Alcorn. I don't know if I saw our Sully District Planning Commissioner, Evelyn Spain, if she's here. No. Vienna Town Councilman Chuck Anderson. And Delegate Karen Keys-Gamarra. Thank you. If I've missed anyone else, I sincerely apologize, but I didn't get your name in advance. So, we also appreciate the media present who are covering this event, especially our local ABC affiliate, WJLA, who is live streaming this program. I want to thank all of our attendees for your interest in this evening's program and for your community involvement. I also want to thank the RCA Board of Directors. We are an all-volunteer organization, and if it weren't for the dedicated service of these volunteers, we would not be able to put this program on tonight. And finally, please join me in welcoming our candidates. James Walkinshaw, the Democratic candidate, and Stewart Whitson, our Republican candidate. You've got quite the entourage here.
I have 5 kids. So they can make a lot of noise.
That's great. So tonight's program is going to begin with a 3-minute opening statement from each candidate, followed by a Q&A session. If you picked up an index card and pencil, please finish writing your question and pass it to the outside aisle. So either that side or that side, for collection by one of our volunteers. I will read as many of your questions as time permits, sometimes combining questions when they have a common theme. Questions directed at no specific candidate will be answered in the following manner. I will ask the first candidate if he would like to respond. Each candidate who chooses to respond will be given up to 2 minutes. Subsequent questions will be answered first by a different candidate on a rotating basis. Questions directed at a specific candidate will be answered as such. The candidate asked will be given 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will then be given 1.5 minutes to compare and contrast their view. Finally, the original speaker will have 30 seconds for any rebuttal if needed. At the end of the program, each candidate will be given 2 minutes for closing remarks. In the interest of time, we ask that you hold your applause until the end of the program. Mr. Walkinshaw will speak first based on a random drawing we did earlier, so let's begin.
Well, thank you, Lynn, and thank you to the Reston Citizens Association and the Reston Community Center, the incredible staff here for hosting us. Stewart, thank you for stepping up to run and for being here this evening. My name is James Walkinshaw. I'm a lifelong Northern Virginian. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a member of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. I spent 11 years as the Chief of Staff to our late Congressman Gerry Connolly, and I've spent 5 years on the Board of Supervisors. And throughout my career, my goal has been to make Fairfax an even better place to live, work, and raise a family. And I've delivered results. I've delivered results alongside Congressman Connolly, passing the Affordable Care Act and bringing hundreds of millions of dollars of federal funding into Northern Virginia to spur economic development. On the Board of Supervisors, I've delivered results on affordable housing, cleaner air and water, helping to make Fairfax the safest large jurisdiction in the United States with the lowest violent crime rate, and funding our world-class public schools. I'm running for Congress because our community is under attack by the Trump administration. The reckless and indiscriminate DOGE job cuts are impacting our friends and neighbors every day. On my way in, I met yet another federal worker, a dedicated public servant who lost their job because of these reckless cuts. And our community needs a member of Congress committed to fighting anyone who attacks our community, and someone with a record of delivering results. And my opponent, Mr. Whitson, is an architect of DOGE. He has said he wants to make DOGE permanent. He said he's running for Congress to be Trump's ally. And he said recently he agrees with Trump on everything. He can't think of anything on which he disagrees with Trump. So the question before us in the 11th District is, do we want someone representing us who will fight for our community, our residents, and our small businesses, or someone who views the job as being Trump's ally? Someone who wants to stand up to DOGE and rebuild a federal government that works for all, or someone who wants to double down on DOGE? In Congress, I will fight to make Northern Virginia and this country more affordable for all Americans, with lower health care costs and lower prescription drug costs, making it more affordable to buy a home, send your kid to college, invest in clean, cheap, renewable energy to bring down utility and electricity costs. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. I ask for your vote on September 9th.
Mr. Whitson.
All right, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out tonight. Thank you so much to the Reston Citizens Association for organizing this event. And thank you to my opponent for coming out as well. So my name is Stewart Whitson. I'm a proud husband and father to 5 school-aged children. I'm an Army combat veteran. I'm a former federal law enforcement officer and special agent with the FBI. And I'm fighting to serve you in the 11th District in Virginia. And so I didn't grow up in the political world. I wasn't handed an office or handed a path to power. Instead, I was taught to work hard and that God, family, and country should come first. And that's why I joined the Army and why I was ready to answer the call when the country needed me. I led over 300 combat missions overseas, including a mission that led to the successful rescue of a hostage. When I came home, I went to law school. And then I joined the FBI, where I put my life on the line again to serve our country and keep the American people safe. And for the last 4.5 years, I've been on the Hill fighting in the trenches to advance conservative policies to improve the lives of all the people in our district. None of these jobs was an easy path, but I chose them because they were the most impactful way that I could serve my community. And at the end of the day, our country is worth fighting for, and I'm a fighter, and so I want to fight for our country. And with the support of my wife and the support of our kids, I'm stepping up to serve our community because guess what? We can do better, and you deserve better. Families are frustrated, and rightfully so. Parents are ignored and sidelined. More and more of our money is being stolen by a never-ending wave of taxes pushed forward by politicians like my opponent. And people don't feel safe in their own community. That is unacceptable. My opponent claims he's fighting for us for over a decade. More and more, but here's the deal. Instead of offering solutions, all he offers are distractions, promises to fight against something rather than to fight for us. Let me tell you what I'll fight for. So I'll fight for safer streets and communities. I'll fight to restore excellence in education, empower parents, and make sure our schools put learning ahead of politics. I will fight to protect our girls and keep boys out of their sports and boys out of their private spaces. And I will fight to lower the cost of living, to cut wasteful spending, and bring fiscal sanity back to Washington. At the end of the day, this is what our campaign is about. It is about service before self. It is about standing up for what's right and fighting for that, even if it's hard. I've been a fighter my whole life. I'm not going to stop now. My name is Stewart Whitson. Please vote for me, and let's get this restore common sense back to the
Okay, everybody. I asked for you to please hold your applause until the end of the program. We've got a lot of questions to get to, and we're not going to have a whole lot of time for a lot of applause in between. So I really do appreciate your working with me and working with us to get this program concluded in an hour. I am going to start with the first question, and that question, since Mr. Walkinshaw was able to speak first, the first question will go to Mr. Whitson. Across the country, we're seeing the effects of climate change, from deadly floods to record heat and increasingly unusual natural disasters. How would you lead Congress to confront the climate crisis, protect our communities, and invest in a clean energy future for Fairfax families?
Thank you for that question. So obviously energy is extremely important, not just for the climate, but also for economic reasons. Every single thing we do, every single thing we see around us, the clothes we're wearing, the building we're in, energy drives the cost of all that. And so that is important, but it's also important for climate reasons. But here's the deal with climate. We have to be rational. We can't get so fixated, and this goes for all issues, not just climate issues, but we cannot get so fixated on one issue, climate, that we forget about the economy or we forget about national security. And so in a nutshell, my policy for energy is an all-the-above approach, right? We need as much energy as we can, but we need energy at a low cost. I think one of the waves of the future is nuclear energy. They've modernized that. They've made it safer. I think that's a great compromise that both sides of the aisle could agree on, where it's clean. It satisfies people that want clean energy, and it also satisfies people that want cheaper more energy. So that would be my solution.
Thank you. Mr. Walkinshaw?
So I'm proud of my work on the Board of Supervisors, where as chair of our environmental committee, I have led our efforts to make Fairfax County a carbon neutral county by 2050. And we do that by investing in renewable energy and retrofitting our buildings. And actually, we've saved taxpayers millions of dollars every year. Latest calculation is we're saving $8 million a year because of our investments in clean energy and making our buildings more efficient. Look, the best thing we can do to address the climate crisis at the federal level is repeal the reconciliation bill that recently passed, Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill, because that bill slashes investments in cheap, clean, renewable energy. And we know now that 95% of the new energy production projects taking place in this country are renewable energy, because the market knows that it's cheaper, cleaner, and better. Unfortunately, Washington hasn't gotten the message, and the reconciliation bill will drive up electricity costs for the average Virginia household by $420 a year because it slashes those investments. So we'll pay more, our air will be dirtier, and our water will be dirtier. I don't think that's the right approach.
Thank you. I'm sorry, that was not directed at any specific candidate, so there's no rebuttal. Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. So our second question this evening goes to Mr. Walkinshaw. Do you support lawful ICE actions in removing people here illegally, especially those with a criminal record?
So Fairfax County is the safest large jurisdiction in the United States of America, and that's not what I say. That's what the International Association of the Chiefs of Police say, and the data that they collect. They collect the violent crime data on every jurisdiction, and we have the lowest. And we do that because we focus on community policing, and we focus on partnering with everyone in our community, including immigrant communities, and we invest in our police department. Federal immigration enforcement should focus on the small number of people who are here and are undocumented and are committing violent crimes. It should not be focused on rounding up law-abiding members of our community who are here, who are part of our community, and are working hard. And the Trump administration has taken their eye off the ball. We just learned last week that 60% of those detained by ICE in our region have not been arrested or charged with any crime. They're just rounding people up to scare them. It doesn't make our community safer, and it is not the right approach for our country.
Hey, folks, please, let's hold the applause until the end of the program. I really do appreciate your cooperation. Mr. Whitson.
So real quick, before I answer that, one of the comments he made is that he's focused right now on investing in our police department. And I find that laughable because this is the guy that voted to give himself a $30,000 pay raise at a time when crime was on the rise in Fairfax County and we were short 200 law enforcement officers. And so now he's up here claiming that he's focused on investing in our police department. I think that's just a joke. So going back to that question, yes, this is a serious problem. For 4 years, we had a wide open border. And as a former FBI special agent, so obviously I did national security matters. I worked Iranian-based threats. I worked the first ISIS claimed attack on the U.S. homeland. I was the lead investigator. So I know the danger from there. But I was also a SWAT team operator in the FBI along the southern border in Arizona. So I have seen firsthand the violence these guys have. The MS-13 are not guys armed with handguns. They have AK-47s. They are violent. They are almost no different than ISIS and how violent they can be to their enemies. And so what the Biden administration did is they opened up the border and they just allowed all those people to flood into our community. This is CBP's own numbers during the Biden administration. 1.7 million known gotaways. What is a gotaway? That means law enforcement officers are engaging with people. They see people illegally crossing the border, but they don't have the manpower to stop what they're doing and go take them. So there's 1.7 million of those folks, and that's numbers from the Biden administration. And so that was unacceptable. And so what happened? My opponent promoted a sanctuary policy forbidding federal employees to stop that. And so that he has brought that crime to our neighborhood, and we have to stop it. Thank you.
Okay. The third question goes to Mr. Whitson. How do you see the federal government's role in education?
So the federal government's role in education is to make sure that communities that don't have the funding they need get the funding they need, because there is some basic requirements where we want to make sure that people have an opportunity. And I think of Native American history, and we look at the creation of the Department of Education. It was something that was created by Jimmy Carter in 1970. What happened with our test scores after the creation of the Department of Ed? They started going down, right? It was a failed experiment. And so what's happened is to try to fix that experiment, the federal government dumped more and more money into the Department of Education, into federal education funding. And what happened? The same results. And so one thing I want to do in Congress is let's flip that on the head. Instead of taking money from the federal government and giving it to federal departments like the Federal Department of Education, or giving it directly to schools, why don't we give it directly to parents? Let's give parents the money and let them decide where they want to go to school. And so here's the deal. My wife and I have 5 kids. Two of our 5 kids go to the public school because we love the public school and we're happy there. And so we choose that. But 3 of them go to a private school. And I think every family in America should have that choice to find the right space for their children to learn. And so that's what I would do, is I would take the Department of Education closing down. We can take those resources and give them directly to families and kids.
Thank you, Mr. Whitson. Mr. Walkinshaw.
So this is another clear distinction between me and my opponent. And Stewart, it's not just Native American schools that are funded via the Department of Education. Title I schools right here in Fairfax County receive vital funding via the Department of Education. All of that is at risk when people like Donald Trump and Stewart Whitson want to dismantle the Department of Education. The Department of Education also plays a critical role in funding and conducting cutting-edge research that local school districts can choose to adopt or not to help make sure every child can learn. But I want to just go a minute on the voucher scheme that Stewart just referenced. Look, this has been tried in several states. And when vouchers are implemented, what happens is wealthy families get their private school tuition paid. That's what happens. Wealthy families who already have their kids in private school get taxpayer dollars to do it. And look, I have no problem with folks sending their kids to private schools, but private schools should not get taxpayer dollars unless they're accountable to the taxpayers and unless they agree to accept every child. Because private schools do not accept every child. They often do not accept children with significant special needs. They often do not accept all children that come from high poverty households. And we cannot give taxpayer dollars without accountability, and if they won't accept all kids.
Thank you. The fourth question will go to Mr. Walkinshaw. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is top of mind for many. As a member of Congress, you will confront difficult foreign policy questions such as what should United States policy be with respect to the Middle East, especially the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. What course of action would you advocate for to resolve this issue?
So this issue is another broken promise from Donald Trump. He promised he would lower prices, and prices are going up. He promised world peace, and we're not seeing world peace in Gaza or elsewhere. And this is a very significant challenge. And let me just say right now, the images coming from Gaza today are unacceptable. The humanitarian crisis is absolutely unacceptable. We need a ceasefire in Gaza yesterday. And Donald Trump needs to get back, bring the parties back to the negotiating table and negotiate a ceasefire that brings all of the hostages home to their families, ends the violence, and surges humanitarian aid into Gaza that reaches the people and the children, especially who need it.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson.
Yes, so the most tragic part of October 7th and the Ukraine war is that they were both avoidable. Weakness invites aggression. Weakness invites aggression. And so during the Biden administration, we had a weak president, and people around the world took advantage of that. The horrific attack. So I said I worked ISIS. If you've seen video from October 7th about Hamas coming across and the things they did with GoPro cams and then coming back across the border to cheering crowds as they unload women from vehicles, if you've seen that, it is no different from ISIS. It is unacceptable, but it all could have been avoided with a stronger commander-in-chief, period. And so if you think Hamas did that attack without Iran's consent, you're wrong. And they never would have done that if President Trump would have been in office. And so it's horrible. And so with that said, yes, so once a war is going on, you have to deal with that. We have to do everything we possibly can to preserve human life. We have to do everything we can to try to help vulnerable people that are in those communities. But I will say this, any people that aren't getting food or any people that aren't getting medical supplies inside Gaza, they are not getting that because of Hamas. It is not Israel, it's not the U.S., it is Hamas is stealing that food and stealing those supplies and taking them away from the people. And if you don't think that's true, then you're wrong. Like, that is just a fact. That is a fact. And so we have to confront this with truth. We have to confront this with truth. But yes, that is one point we agree on, is I do think the devastation needs to stop, and I do want peace in the Middle East, and I think our president is doing as much as he can to achieve that.
Okay, our fifth question is going to go to Mr. Whitson. How will you support federal workers and maintain a professional civil service?
So, as I mentioned at the beginning, I spent a decade as a federal employee. So I'm someone that knows full well, how important the work is they do. I know that 99% of the federal employees that serve our country are great, wonderful, hardworking Americans who love our country and literally devote their life to making it better. I also know that when a federal employee loses their job, it's not just that person, it's their family that's losing their job. And so layoffs are horrible and they're sad. And so the key is, where do we go from here? What's the path forward? How do we help people? And so my big thing with federal workers, and my message to them is this: look, I'm one of you. I want to help you. If you're someone that was in the government and you felt like you were pushed out and you're a good employee and you want to come back in, I want to do everything in my power to help find you a home back in the federal government. But you know what else I want to do that's even more important? I want to find you other economic opportunities. We have veterans. We have CIA. We have FBI. We have everything. These people have decades of experience that cannot be replicated in any classroom. They can bring that wealth of experience to the private sector, launch a second career, do even bigger things for their country, but have a new and incredible life. And so whatever boat they fit in, I want to help them and help them get there. Thank you.
Mr. Walkinshaw.
Well, Stewart, if you want to help the federal employees who have lost their job or those thousands who are about to lose their job, you could stop advocating to make DOGE permanent. You could denounce DOGE. And you could commit to co-sponsoring legislation like the Delete DOGE Act, as I have, to put an end to this chaos. Our friends and neighbors are being recklessly fired. And it's not the low performers. There's no distinction being made between high and low performers by DOGE and the Trump administration. They are indiscriminately firing the very people you say you have sympathy for. And you could do something. You could start to denounce it. But you won't do that. Because first and foremost, you are Donald Trump's ally. And I'm not running to be anyone's ally in Washington. I'm running to be the ally of the 11th Congressional District and to fight for our community. And I will fight DOGE. I will fight the reckless job cuts that are impacting not just our federal employees, by the way, but also our small businesses. Because every day I talk to small businesses who have had their contracts frozen or canceled with no rationale and no explanation. And a lot of them are veterans who run those small businesses. And you could denounce that as well, but you won't do that because your priority is to be Donald Trump's ally.
Thank you, Mr. Walkinshaw. Our sixth question will go to Mr. Walkinshaw. What are your recommendations for future generations and young people now to be able to afford housing in Congressional District 11 in the future? How will you help?
So I'm very proud of my record on affordable housing. When I was elected to the Board of Supervisors in 2019, I looked at the massive, usually vacant parking lot in front of the government center and said that is a waste of space. And I went to work, and today you can go there and see the cranes constructing 279 new units of affordable housing that will have childcare affordable to low and moderate income families on the ground floor. And for Fairfax County taxpayers, because of the way we structure the finance and the outside resources, federal, state, nonprofit that we bring together, the cost per unit is very minimal. It is an incredible investment to provide an affordable home for a police officer, a firefighter, a teacher, or someone else in our community making $60,000 a year. So we have to continue to invest in committed affordable housing units like that. I'm also a believer in supply and demand, and if you want to put downward pressure on housing prices, you have to increase the supply of housing. And I'm proud of my record on the Board of Supervisors advocating to remove bureaucratic red tape and barriers that prevent people from buying new homes and constructing new homes in Fairfax County. At the federal level, we need to improve the low-income housing tax credit. We need to increase funding for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And we need to create incentives for local governments like Fairfax's that have done the hard work to increase housing supply, and I'll fight to do all those things.
Thank you, Mr. Whitson.
So I think the two big factors that are keeping a lot of young families from getting their first home are interest rates are way too high and taxes are way too high. And so both of those are a product of reckless spending or reckless policy making, right? So we know, so taxes, we know, right? So real estate taxes, my opponent raised them by 7%. 7%. And so just so you know, to the average family, that's an extra $400 or around $400 a year that they're having to pay for that tax. And so does that make it hard for people to own a home because what people do is they go online and they look at the home, and you used to just do the calculator and say, oh, here's my interest rate, this is what the house will cost me. But now you look at the property taxes, right? And they look in Fairfax County and they say, man, my property taxes are almost as much as a mortgage somewhere else. I'm gonna move out of Fairfax County. I can't afford that. And so if we want to fix that problem, we have to lower the taxes and we have to lower the interest rate. And the way we lower the interest rate is we stop the reckless spending at the federal executive branch level. All these free-handed, his solution is, let's build government affordable housing. My solution is, let's give economic opportunities so people can have their own home that they own, that they can thrive in, right? And so we need to create economic opportunities. We need to put more money in people's pockets so they have money to spend on a mortgage, and let everyone enjoy the American dream and have their own home.
Thank you, Mr. Whitson. Our seventh question is going to go to Mr. Whitson. Artificial intelligence is transforming industries, creating both opportunities and concerns about job displacement, privacy, and misinformation. What steps would you support in Congress to ensure AI development benefits workers and safeguards democratic values?
Yeah, I think this is something that this would be a good topic for a commission, to have people that are experts that can come in and talk about some of the dangers with AI. And so I'll say this, one of the jobs I did in the FBI is I led a technology unit that the focus was exploiting electronic communications. And I came into the unit, and a lot of the work was being done manually. So there's all these different databases that you had to search. And so they had just armies of people, and each person would be searching a different database. And one of the things I did is I came in, and with the help of computer scientists, we created a program where with the click of the button, all those searches could be done by a single person, and they could be done a lot quicker. And there was a lot of worry. There was worry by the folks that, man, if you take this, what am I going to do? There's not going to be a job, it's something for me to do, a job, you're taking my job. And instead, what happened was, instead of doing that work, where it was just data crunching and looking in Excel spreadsheets, the computer could do that. They could do more sophisticated work. They could take those results and write reports and do more analysis. And so my point is, I think AI, there's some of those concerns with the population where it's going to interfere with employment and job opportunities. I think in Congress, we can help make it clear that it's not. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walkinshaw.
So first I'll speak from the Northern Virginia angle. And since the DOGE cuts started going into place, a lot of folks have said, well, we just need to diversify our economy in Northern Virginia. And the good news is we have been working to do that for more than a decade. In the 5 years that I've been on the Board of Supervisors, we have worked to diversify our local economy. We now have a burgeoning and growing space tech economy, quantum computing economy with new startups launching and locating here in Fairfax County. With respect to AI, we're working very hard to make Fairfax County in Northern Virginia known worldwide as the region where our workforce knows how to utilize AI, because there will be no such thing as an AI company in the future. Every company is an AI company. And if we have the workforce that knows how to utilize it, every company will want to be here in Fairfax, and that's what we're working to do. With respect to national policy, we have two competing challenges. One, China is racing to beat us in terms of AI development. And from a national security and economic security perspective, we cannot let that happen. I agree with the Trump administration on that. But we also have to make sure there are responsible safeguards in place to protect people's privacy, to protect copyright rights, and ensure that AI isn't misused here in the United States or globally. So the challenge is balancing those two competing demands. And there was a task force. The Biden administration had a task force that released, I think, some good recommendations in terms of the safeguards. The Trump administration just this week released a new report with, I think, some good recommendations on ensuring China doesn't outpace us. I think we can take from both.
Thank you. Our eighth question. I noticed that there are some folks that are standing up in the back and around the room. We do have some seating up here that is open if you'd like to come take a seat. And I am going to ask again that you all please be considerate and use proper protocols and courtesies when I ask not to shout out, especially any obscenities. Would really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Question number 8 is going to go to Mr. Walkinshaw. Do you believe the size of the federal deficit is a major problem? What steps will you take to reduce the federal deficit, or will it be necessary to raise taxes?
I do think the size of the federal deficit is increasingly a problem. And if you look at our debt as a percentage of GDP, it is historically high. My opponent will say we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem in the federal government. However, the truth is we do have a revenue problem in the federal government, and it is exacerbated by the fact that the Trump administration, both in their first term and now, have systematically dismantled the Internal Revenue Service. They have made it impossible for the Internal Revenue Service to identify those who are cheating on their taxes, including, and most of this is very wealthy people and large businesses who are not paying their share of taxes while hardworking Americans do. And it is a systematic effort. So a small investment in the Internal Revenue Service in their capabilities, in restoring their capabilities, would generate a significant amount of revenue to help us reduce the deficit and pay down the debt. But the most important thing we can do to reduce the deficit and pay down the debt is to repeal the big, beautiful bill. A bill that will add, as the Congressional Budget Office has said multiple times, $3.4 trillion to the deficit. If you want to count the interest, and I count the interest, $4 trillion to the deficit. A bill that they started off saying would reduce the deficit. And if you're a conservative who's angry about the deficit and the debt, you should be outraged about this bill because it is going to explode the deficit and debt. And the elements of the bill that reduce spending, Republicans in Congress are already saying when election time comes around, they'll repeal those. They're trying to pull the wool over your eyes. This bill will move us toward bankrupting this country. It needs to be repealed.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson?
So just a quick word. So the CBO math, here's why it's broken, all right? So what they do is they operate under an assumption that the Trump tax cuts were going to end. And so when they just extended the Trump tax cuts, they counted that as a whole new cost on top. And you and I know that's not a whole new cost. And so it's swamp math, basically. But with that said, with the and the CBO is anything but nonpartisan. But so let's talk the deficit. So yes, the deficit's a big problem. How do you fix it? Two ways. One, you have to rein in reckless spending. And number two, you have to promote growth. And how do you promote growth? You reduce taxes. So my opponent thinks the only way he's going to raise revenue is he's going to increase taxes on you. But the truth is, if you reduce taxes and you put that money back into the pockets of consumers, that creates growth and new jobs and other things. And so it actually, revenue comes up because more jobs are created, more people are in the workforce, and they're paying taxes. And so revenue does rise as a natural result of that. But it helps in a myriad of other ways. But the other thing you have to stop is the reckless spending. In the Biden administration, President Biden spent $1.7 trillion through executive fiat. He didn't go to Congress and ask for permission. He just, with the stroke of a pen, spent $1.7 trillion. And so we have to stop that. How do we stop that? We stop that with the REINS Act, regulations from the executive in need of scrutiny. What it would do is say anytime the executive branch, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, anytime they want to create a new rule that has a cost of $100 million or more, they have to get Congress to approve it first. If you put those two things in place, you'll fix the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Whitson. The ninth question goes to Mr. Whitson. What policies will you support to keep Social Security solvent?
So the best way to keep Social Security solid is to promote work over welfare. And so right now we have millions of able-bodied adults, so not disabled, and I'm talking about senior citizens, not pregnant women, not children in poverty. I'm saying able-bodied adults that are sitting on the sideline and not engaging in the workforce. I had breakfast this morning with Governor Youngkin, and he told me right now there are 250,000 open jobs in Virginia. And so there are jobs to be had, but we have people sitting on the sideline. And the reason they're sitting on the sideline is people like my opponent are pushing welfare onto healthy adults and creating dependency. But here's the deal. Work is actually good. Work is about so much more than just putting money in your pocket. Work gives self-respect. Work brings dignity. Again, everything we see in this room, the clothes you're wearing, the building we're in, is all the result of work. And so when people are denied that, you're taking something away from them that hurts them far more than economically. You're hurting them and you're hurting their kids. And so the reckless policies of the left is they're pushing welfare onto people that don't need it. And at the same time, they're putting these programs at risk for the truly vulnerable that they're designed for. And so when you have a finite amount of resources, if you're not giving it to the elderly, the disabled, and you're instead spreading it across to able-bodied adults that are sitting on the couch playing video games, that's a big problem and it needs to stop.
Thank you, Mr. Walkinshaw. Folks?
Stewart, I recommend you talk to some of the thousands of federal employees who are out of work and ask them if they're sitting on the sidelines or playing video games. That is an outrageous thing to say in a community that is suffering from job loss right now. The question was about Social Security, and I don't know if you meant to say that it's senior citizens who are sitting at home playing video games, but you didn't answer the question about Social Security. Look, Social Security solvency is a challenging problem, but it's a math problem. Right now, the tax on Social Security is capped, and a billionaire pays the exact same dollar amount as a two-income family living right here in Fairfax County. And I think a billionaire or a decamillionaire like Glenn Youngkin, who you had lunch with, could afford to pay a little bit more to ensure that Social Security is solvent for generations to come. The other thing we can do, and this is about work, we all know that the hardest working folks in our community are immigrants. And the best way to ensure the solvency of Social Security is to welcome immigrants who want to come here and work and are younger than the average American population and pay into Social Security. Rounding them up, scaring them, convincing them to self-deport is self-defeating when it comes to the solvency of Social Security.
Thank you. Our 10th question will go to Mr. Walkinshaw. The United States has AI ambition that is causing an energy crunch. How will we increase energy without raising costs on residents?
Well, we've spent some time talking about this already. Look, the Inflation Reduction Act that President Biden led in passing made historic investments in clean energy. And look, I think an all of the above approach to energy works, but the market is choosing clean and renewable energy. And as long as Washington doesn't get in the way, the market will continue to choose clean and renewable energy. The last thing we should be doing right now, as we know our energy needs are increasing because of AI and data centers, which most studies demonstrate will be about a quarter of the increased energy we need. But the other 3/4 comes from increasing electrification. People are using more electricity in their cars and homes, and we have to have the electrons to meet that capacity. So we have to be investing in the types of energy that can scale and that are clean, cheap, and renewable. And we also have to improve permitting so that we can distribute that electricity across the country where it needs to get. This is the most challenging infrastructure issue that we face as a nation. And I'm an optimist about this. You know, the United States of America has done some incredible things in our history. We have come together to meet incredible challenges. This is one of our next great challenges. And it shouldn't be a Republican or a Democratic challenge. We should all embrace the promise of cheap, clean, renewable energy that can lead to cleaner air, cleaner water, lower utility bills and electric bills, and meet our energy needs so we can continue to thrive economically.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson?
And we did, answer this a little earlier, but I think the key is improved nuclear facilities. I think a lot of the other clean sources of energy, whether it's solar or wind power, have shown that they're unreliable, that they take up massive amounts of land, and so that's a prime example of where we can't let emotion get in the way where we design these policies. We do need to be smart about it, and I think these small new reactors on the nuclear side can be placed around the state in places where the communities approve, and it can provide reliable sources of energy to help fund AI. So,
thank you. Our 11th question is going to go to Mr. Whitson. What would be the first piece of legislation that you would initiate once in office?
So the first piece would be the regulations from the Executive in Need of Scrutiny Act, which I said would obviously require congressional pre-approval before the executive branch, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, could spend $100 million or more on a new rule or regulation. So that's the first piece. But since I already gave that, I'll give you the second one. So the second one would be use or lose. So right now, if you're anyone who's been in a federal executive branch agency or in the military, you know when you get to the end of a fiscal year, there's this policy called use or lose. You have to spend everything that you haven't spent, otherwise you're worried you won't get the same amount from Congress for the next year. And so all these agencies across our federal government are just buying junk and spending money to try to get it out the door so they can satisfy that. That's broken. That is broken. That is insane. Instead, federal agencies that are able to accomplish the mission by spending less than what Congress allocated, they should be rewarded, right? And that money should go back in the pockets of the taxpayers. And so just that little change, if we change that way of thinking across the government, do you realize how much that would save? I mean, it's incredible. And what could we do with all the great things we could do? So that would be those are the two I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walkinshaw.
I will introduce legislation to defund DOJ and legislation to restore the civil service protections that federal workers need. And look, we have a 100+ year history in this nation of a nonpartisan civil service that has served us very well. We had a spoils system in this nation for a long time, and I think one of the lies of DOJ that needs to be revealed, DOJ is not saving taxpayer dollars, and DOJ is not about saving taxpayer dollars. DOJ is about creating a federal government that is beholden to the whims of Donald Trump. They are requiring applicants for federal jobs to write Dear Donald essays about how wonderful Donald Trump is. The goal is to make sure that everyone who works for the federal government is like Mr. Whitson, an ally of Donald Trump. And that's not what the federal government should be. The federal government exists to serve the American people, Democratic presidents, Republican presidents. So I will proudly introduce legislation to defund DOJ and to restore the civil service protections that federal employees need so we can have a nonpartisan civil service in this nation again.
Thank you. Our 12th question is going to Mr. Walkinshaw. What does America First mean to you, and how does it influence your life and politics?
Well, look, this might surprise some of you in this room. I am a nationalist. I believe America is the greatest nation on earth, but I have a slightly different take on nationalism than Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have. I believe that the greatness of our nation is based in our founding documents. And the founders made it very clear that to be an American is not about your ethnicity, it's not about your lineage. You don't have to have a great-great-great-grandfather who was born in this country as I do to be an American. To be an American means to believe in our ideas and our ideals of life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and that all are created equal. That's what America First means for me. And quite frankly, I don't think President Trump and Vice President Vance and congressional Republicans, for the most part, share that view of America. I think they believe in America that is based on whether you're an immigrant or you're not an immigrant. And America First for me will mean fighting for the America that our founders, that presidents historically have advocated for, welcoming immigrants from across the globe, whether it was John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan. We have to get back to fighting for that America.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson.
Yeah, so I think in its most simplest terms, America First it's the idea of just putting America or whoever the people you represent before anyone else. And so it's basically a reminder we give ourselves, like anytime we're doing a new policy, anytime we're making a decision, anytime we're spending the taxpayers' money, anytime we're sending people away to war, that we stop for a second and just ask ourselves, is this in our best interest? And I think sometimes one of the things, like we are the greatest nation on earth. We're full of good people who love others and want to help others. And so sometimes we have zeal that anytime there's something on the other side of the globe that we want to go there and help. And that's not a bad thing, that instinct to do that. That's actually a good thing. That makes us great people. That makes us Americans. But as elected leaders, we have to come in and be responsible and think long term and not get driven by emotions and stop and say, wait, is this in America's best interest? And so for me, America First for a Virginia person, my thing is Virginia 11. That translates down. And so my job in Congress is to stop anytime something's happening and say, wait, the people in Virginia's 11th, is this best for them? Is what I'm doing best for them? And sometimes it won't be, sometimes I won't get everything you want, but it's like that's a healthy way to stop and just think before we act.
Thank you. Okay, our 13th question is going to go to Mr. Whitson. If elected, What committees will you seek to serve on? How will these choices help our district?
So the first one that comes to mind is the Oversight Committee. So it's actually the committee that Gerry Connolly was on before. The reason I would choose that is it is a committee that has broad oversight across government. And so I feel like that would be a good spot to be able to again, rein in the reckless spending, get the government back in control. So that would be a first spot I would go to. The other one is the Judiciary Committee, obviously has oversight of the FBI. And so spending a decade in the FBI, I know full well how important it is to have a federal law enforcement agency that's not only world class and great at what it does, but it's one that's trusted by the people, right? And so unfortunately, in the prior administration, things were done that made, and not by them, but by people in the FBI's rank and file, that basically lost that trust for a lot of Americans. And so we can say whether that's fair or not, but the truth is that's the reality. And so we have to take that on head on. And so I think in Congress, that would be another place, if I was on the Judiciary Committee, where I could bring that in and know that 99% of the FBI are great, wonderful people, but we do have to restore that trust, or they can't do their job. So that's
Thank you. Mr. Walkinshaw.
Well, I agree we need to restore trust in the FBI. Right now we have an FBI director who has an enemies list, an FBI director who has fired FBI employees because they were on that enemies list. In fact, one, maybe a former colleague of yours you might have worked with, was fired merely because he was an acquaintance of someone who was on the enemies list. So if we're going to restore trust in the FBI director needs to resign tomorrow. That's how we restore trust in the FBI. I would hope to serve on the Oversight Committee. I spent 11 years working with Gerry Connolly and his work on that committee. It gets a lot of attention for the partisan battles that take place there, and sometimes those are important, but it is also the venue where very important detailed issues related to the federal workforce, the postal system, and federal contracting are dealt with, all of which are critically important to our economy here in the 11th District. I also would hope to serve on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. I currently chair our region's National Capital Transportation Planning Board, so I work across the region to develop our comprehensive transportation plan to spur increased economic development and growth here. We have critical issues in terms of metro funding, the 2 airports here in Northern Virginia, a significant highway system and road system, and growing transit-oriented development areas, all of which can be worked on from the Transportation Infrastructure Committee.
Thank you. Our 14th question is going to go to Mr. Walkinshaw. Will you support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act?
Yes, I will support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And look, the diminution of the authorities of the Voting Rights Act has been one of the worst decisions made in the last 10 years with respect to voting rights. We have real challenges across the country where people's voting rights are being circumscribed and attacked. I think the most significant one right now is an outrageous effort in Texas to rig the game in the midterm elections and do midterm redistricting. And President Trump has been very open and honest about it. He wants to do it because he thinks he can get 5 more seats. I don't think that's how our district should be drawn. We need to protect everyone's right to vote, and we need to ensure that folks have the opportunity to vote in fair districts in this country.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson.
So when it comes to election integrity, the key is we need elections that we trust. So when we get to the end of this election, we need to both wake up the day after the election, and no matter who won or didn't win, we have to trust the outcome, right? And so if you're on the side that lost, it shouldn't be, hey, was there funny business going on? It should just be very simple. I got to work harder. I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I'm going to work with people, and we're going to get elected. That should be the attitude. And the fact of the matter is right now, because we don't have an ID requirement, photo ID requirement, people don't have that confidence. And so I wouldn't support that. I would support the SAVE Act, because I do think this is an 80-20 issue. All right, you're required to show a photo ID when you go to buy cigarettes. You're required to show a photo ID when you buy alcohol. You're required to show a photo ID when you get on an airplane. And so the idea that you wouldn't show a photo ID when you vote is just ridiculous. And guess what? 80% of Americans agree with me.
Thank you. Our 15th question goes to Mr. Whitson. How do you feel about term limits?
I mean, so going back to Washington's example, obviously, I think it's instinctively a good idea. I think one of the biggest problems in Washington are people that get entrenched. I mean, we look at this election, for instance. For 16 years, people didn't have a real choice. It was Connolly or nothing, and that's just a fact. And so that could make some people happy, but the thing is, that's not a choice. And so that's what makes this election so exciting, is you actually do have a choice. So you can see we're very different candidates, and that's fine. And so you will get to know me, and maybe you won't like me, and that's fine. But at least you have a choice. And so, but with term limits, though, you don't get that. And so I like the idea of a two-term limit. But I also think in some of these districts, when people get into office, you don't want to leave until you know there's someone that can take your place that's ready to come in. So I think I'm kind of on the fence with that.
Thank you. Mr. Walkinshaw?
Well, with respect to the 16 years that Gerry Connolly represented us in Congress, there were choices. We should talk to some of the previous Republican candidates who ran against him. There were elections. There were primaries and general elections. There absolutely were choices. And let me go back to election integrity and people having faith in our elections. The biggest threat to people having faith in their ability to trust our elections is Donald Trump continuing to lie about the 2020 election. And if you don't trust our elections, it's because you believe Donald Trump's continued lies about our elections. I don't support term limits. I think the voters should have the opportunity to elect or re-elect their members of Congress every 2 years. I can also say, as somebody who spent 11 years working in Congress, if you had term limits in Congress, the most powerful people in Congress would be the lobbyists and the staff members who actually know what's going on. As a chief of staff for 11 years, I knew a lot more than a freshman member of Congress did. The lobbyists on whatever issue, whether you agree with their issue or not, are going to know a lot more about a member of Congress who's only been there for 2 or 4 years. So I think we let the voters decide, as we did throughout Gerry Connolly's career in Congress here in the 11th District.
Thank you. The 16th question goes to Mr. Walkinshaw. What is your hope for everyone in this room, and where do you find your hope?
What is my hope for everyone in this room? Well, I want every resident of the 11th District and everyone in this country to have the opportunity to reach their full potential and meet their dreams, whatever that might be. And I think to do that, we have to build an economy that truly works for everyone, so that people aren't saddled with medical debt, so that people can afford to buy a home with low interest rates that are going to be a bigger challenge because of the reconciliation bill and the deficit that it's driving up, where people have the opportunity to get a good paying job where if they work hard every day for 40 hours a week, they can afford to live a life with dignity, maybe take a vacation, send their kids to college if they want to. That's my hope for every person in the 11th District. I think to do that, especially here, we have to put the brakes on Trump's reckless agenda, because it is doing damage to our community and to our local economy each and every day. Federal workers, small businesses, all being harmed by reckless, indiscriminate cuts that make absolutely no sense. We have to put the brakes on it.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson.
So my hope for everyone is that they'll see that they finally have a choice, right? My hope is that people in our district will realize that, look, you have the voice, you have the ability to come forward and find someone that'll actually improve your life, someone that'll put people over politics. And I hope that all of us will start to do that, to think, like, let's not, instead of making the whole race about pretending you're going to be able to take on President Trump, let's make the race about how are we going to deliver results for the people in our district.
Thank you. Our 17th question is going to start with Mr. Whitson. Say something nice about your opponent.
So I'll say this: when we got here, before the cameras got on, I came up and introduced myself to him because I wanted to have a nice interaction, and he greeted me nicely and told me good luck tonight. And so I think at the end of the day, we are just people. We have very different ideas on what the best policies are for the people we serve, but we're both passionate. I don't think there can be any question from anyone, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, that I'm authentic, that everything I'm telling you, I believe. And you might agree with it or you might not, but I thought he was authentic, and I thought he greeted me nicely. So,
Thank you, Mr. Whitson. Mr. Walkinshaw.
Very hard question to answer. Stewart and I just met, but he clearly has an amazing family, and I'm sure is a wonderful father and husband. And we have very different views about the direction of our country and our district, but it's not hard for me to say something nice about him.
Thank you. So we are nearing the end of our program. I would like to give you each 2 minutes for closing remarks, and we're going to start with Mr. Whitson.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I want to close tonight by asking you to look around. Look at what's happening in our district. Every year brings new, higher taxes. Countless women I've talked to on the campaign trail are scared to walk alone at night. Parents are worried about their kids being exposed to things in school that they're not ready for them to be exposed to. And nothing changes. Why? Because people like my opponent, who are in power, and they've been in power for years, aren't interested in fixing these problems. He's literally had years to do something about all these problems, and he hasn't. And now, in the middle of this short election, we're supposed to believe that he's suddenly going to fight for us, that he's going to deliver on all these promises. He said he's on, the Transportation Commission. How's that going right now? How's traffic? And so there's all these problems. Like, you have to deliver. You have to actually give results. And he's had years to do that, and he hasn't. I've spent my life in service, leading combat missions in the U.S. Army, stopping threats as a federal law enforcement officer. I didn't do those things because they were easy. I did them because I believed that fighting for them was the right thing to do, even though it was hard. I'm not here to play politics. I'm here to serve. I'm asking for your vote tonight so that I can fight for you, so that I can fight for our families, so that I can fight for your safety, so that I can fight for your freedom. This election is about more than just blue versus red or Democrat versus Republican. It's about service over self. It's about action over words. It's about people over politics. It's about restoring common sense. All right. For the first time in 16 long years, we do have a choice. And so I hope that you'll come away and you'll see the difference in the choice. So number one, I want to lower your taxes. He wants to raise your taxes. I want to protect our girls. He wants to allow boys to compete against girls and invade their private spaces. If he doesn't, let's let him do it. He can say that. I want to empower parents. He wants to limit parents' rights. I dedicated my life to serving our country. He voted to give himself a $30,000 pay raise when we were short 200 law enforcement officers. This is a very different two candidates. It's up to you to make the choice.
Thank you, Mr. Whitson. Mr. Walkinshaw.
Well, I want to thank the RCA for hosting this forum. I want to thank the community center and the staff here for bringing us all together. Stewart, I want to thank you for being here and for stepping up to run. Look, I said when we started that this race is about a clear choice, and I think we've seen tonight a clear choice. I have a record of delivering results for Northern Virginia. As Gerry Connolly's chief of staff, I worked alongside him to deliver hundreds of millions of dollars in federal investments, including for transportation, that have made our economy stronger and more vibrant. On the Board of Supervisors, I've led to increase access to affordable housing. I've led to keep guns out of our libraries and rec centers where they do not belong. I've led to make our air and our water cleaner. I have delivered real results on the Board of Supervisors. And this race is about who will prioritize you in the 11th District. And my opponent has made it quite clear. He said throughout the campaign, his priority is to be Donald Trump's ally. He wants to double down on DOGE and the destruction it is causing for our federal workers and small businesses in this country. He agrees with Donald Trump on everything, as he has said. I'm running for Congress to fight for every single family in the 11th District, so your life can be more affordable, where if you or your spouse or your neighbor is a federal worker, you no longer have to live with the threat of having your job cut any given day or have your service denigrated. And I'm going to Washington to deliver results for our community, as I have throughout my career, to make it easier to purchase a home, to make it easier to send your kids to college, to make our community even more vibrant than it is today. So thank you all so much for being here today. I appreciate all of you who came out. I ask for your vote on September 9th. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So on behalf of Reston Citizens Association, I want to thank both of these candidates for their commitment to our community and their desire to represent us in Washington. And I want to thank you all for coming and, again, showing your community involvement and your interest in the outcome of this election. Thank you again. I think the media has some interviews that they've set up with the candidates, but please stick around if you would like to speak with the candidates individually. Please do so. But again, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it.